I told you yesterday that we would get CaMary's version of our first being together and first meeting. We have to go back to homecoming prior to this semester where we had the class on horse production. And during homecoming weekend, CaMary is sitting at home. She had moved back home from living on campus for a while because they lived right there on the edge of Stillwater. But she's sitting in the living room reading. And her dad comes in and he says, "CaMary, what are you doing? It's homecoming weekend." She says, "Dad, I'm reading." And he said, "You should be married by now. I should have grandchildren by now." And says, "If you don't meet someone, how are you going to do that if you don't date?" And she said, "Dad, there's none of them that I've met that like my horses. There's none of them that go to church with us." And she said, "If you'd let me go to BYU, at least I could marry someone that's of our same religion." And he said, "CaMary, you don't transfer schools your senior year." And he's right. And she said, "But there are no prospects here for me." And so they were discussing this, and after he had said he should have grandchildren, she was, of course, defensive, and they discussed it. Neither of them were loud. Mr. Berry was not loud and boisterous, but they discussed the problem and discussed the possibilities, and they came to an agreement. The agreement was that if she would take the classes that he put her in that spring, if she didn't meet someone by the end of the school year, he would send her anywhere in the world she wanted to go to school. She thought, BYU Hawaii sounds good, and so that's where they had left it. And she had come to the horse production class, and she was shy. As she described the horse production class, she walked in the door and it was a sea of chocolate and gray hats and some browns. And because she was shy, she sat next to the girls and kept looking down. Well, that morning that we had the wager with John and I had the wager that she would sit by me. She came in and sat next to the girls, and that's when she saw my name where I'd written it on the thing. So it's the next day. She knew my name when we got out to judge the colts that afternoon. And remember, I had her sitting on the fence, and I asked her, "What's a girl like you doing in here?" Is she going to say, "My daddy made me"? Not on your life, she's not. So around, and she fulfilled her dad's assignment by inviting me out to watch her ride. And, she had the kids around her there, and I'm getting ready to saddle this horse that she's told me I can go ride, and I described that to you last time, how he bowed up his back and he bucked, and so when I got through with all that, when I got on him and came back, Mr. Berry was there and he hired me to work. Well, one of the assignments that I had was to take her and her students off to clinics or horse shows and whatnot. Well, it was March the 18th, and I had taken a trailer load of horses and students in CaMary down to Edmond, and we are there, and I'm watching, and it's a miserable, miserable day. It's raining and it's sleeting. I mean, that's how cold, it's half sleet and half rain. And Colonel Robinson, who was a former U.S. Olympic champion, was giving the clinic, and he's out in this open air arena, and he has all of them going around and around the arena on the outside. And he had a set of fences set up down the middle. He had 4 fences. And he would point to someone and have them go through the fences. And so CaMary came over and knocked on the window, and she said, "Can you hold my horse?" She says, "I'm freezing. I'd like to get warm." So I stepped out of the car, and I'm standing there holding the horse. And I said, "May I get on him and go? I'd like to hear what he's saying. Go ride with him." She said, "Sure." Because I'd been riding some English saddles a little bit. I'd not jumped any at all, except when I was growing up. I jumped booger over feed troughs and logs and things that I could find to jump. So I get on Romeo, and Romeo is a saddlebred stallion. CaMary had ridden saddle seat for many years and had gotten this stallion. He was a bright chestnut, good-looking horse. Her mother had named him Romeo. He had some long registered name that I still don't know what it was. Um, but I rode out with the rest of them, and I'm riding around the arena, and Colonel Robbie would just point to someone and have them come down through the jumps. And I heard him yell, and so I looked in. I hadn't been looking; I'd just been listening. And he's pointing at me, and I pointed to myself, and I said, "Me?" And he, "Yeah, down through the fences." Oh, okay. And so I pointed Romeo down through this series of 4 fences, and I heard CaMary scream as I went over the third one. But riding over fences was no problem. It was very similar to a nice rolling buck. And so I didn't have any problem with it. Colonel Robbie said years later when CaMary and I were pros, he said, "I watched Lee Win jump his first jump because I was just in a pair of cowboy boots and wheat jeans and a Western jacket." Anyway, the clinic was over, and we had the horse back in a stall, and I'm on one side of him grooming. CaMary's on the other side grooming. Well, I had been watching CaMary pretty close for the last 6 weeks that we'd been riding together or so. And she met all the criteria of what I was looking for in a wife. And so I couldn't even see her over the back of the horse. Romeo was a pretty tall horse. And CaMary's head was down below his withers. Anyway, I asked her to marry me, and I said, "I'm going to ask you to marry me, but if you say no, that's fine. I'll just disappear out of your life." Well, she wasn't very fond of me disappearing out of her life, evidently, because she said yes, thinking that she could always say no at some point in time. But she never did. But I never held her hand. I hadn't kissed her to that point, and but she still had all the qualities that I was looking for in a lifetime partner. Tomorrow we'll take it up and go a little further.